Whatever journalists do not like, they tend to label as right-wing toxic masculinity. And that's what we get with the way journalists treat the carnivore movement. And there's another deeper reason. Hello, friends. It's the Carnivore Rabbi. A rabbi is a guide and source of inspiration, and that's what this channel provides to carnivores of all faiths. Welcome. Is the carnivore diet political? No, not at all. It is the proper human diet. But unfortunately, it has become political. Seriously, many people, from journalists to politicians, are trying to make the carnivore diet political. And if we don't reject it and answer their charges, we may get hurt. We may see meat skyrocket in price. We may see more and more people demonize the carnivore way of life. I like to say that politics divides us and carnivore unites us. But we need to understand what is going on. And here's where the divisions are coming from. First, we see journalists create this fake male versus female, conservative versus liberal narrative. About 6 weeks ago, the New York Times wrote an article about carnivore. There were actually a few nice things in the article, but the overwhelming thrust of it was that the carnivore diet is an expression of toxic masculinity. It's just muscle-bound guys showing off. Nina Teicholz, who wrote the incredible book, Big Fat Surprise, she wrote an amazing response to this article. Her book, by the way, if you haven't read it, Big Fat Surprise, it was really the first modern book to take down the food and sugar industry and showed the way they corrupted and brainwashed doctors and nutritionists and the American public. In other words, she showed the way the culture blamed fat for what sugar caused. But Teicholz wrote this in response to that New York Times article. Quote, "The carnivore diet has been shoehorned into a culture war narrative where eating meat is mainly male, usually toxic, and always right-wing. By this accounting, carnivores are not humans who eat meat, eggs, fish, shellfish, and sometimes dairy, hoping to cure whatever ails them. Rather, they are beast-like creatures who eat liver, testicles, and gnash at raw meat like deranged lunatics." Why the hyperbole? She asks. Few reasons. Now, this is me talking now. The journalists who write for the New York Times in similar publications generally find killing animals morally abhorrent. They don't want to deal with the reality that predator and prey is part of our natural order. These journalists generally do not hunt. They don't know anyone who hunts. And if they eat meat, which some of them do, they pretend as if no animals were harmed in the creation of this meat. Just like those old commercials. No animals were harmed in the making of this commercial. They'll pretend no animals were harmed in the making of this meat. It's pretty naive, but it's real. And there's another reason journalists have shoehorned carnivore into this awful narrative. It's the environmental argument. Now, I'm not going to get into the argument now for why carnivory is incredibly good for the environment. I will a little bit. It causes much less waste and replenishes the land. But that's a discussion for another day. But the many journalists and politicians, they associate meat with environmental destruction. As Teicholz writes, carnivory is also abhorrent to a large portion of elites for the way it seems to openly snub the existential threat of climate change. Meat is essentially a huge check written against the depleted funds of our environment, is how Tad Friend, a New Yorker staff writer, put it in 2019. More recently, Walter Willett, he should be said in the same breath as Ansel Keys as a villain. More recently, Walter Willett of the Harvard T.S. Chan School of Public Health responded to health questions on carnivore from a CNBC reporter saying, quote, "There's also the issue of justice that basically the global north, Europe and the United States, cause most of the problems with climate change that we have today. And this diet perpetuates that. OMG. Or as Bill Gates persistently reminds us, saving the planet will require that the rich nations shift entirely to synthetic beef. By this thinking, carnivores are climate deniers. There are many thoughtful and well-reasoned arguments to counter these criticisms. As Teicholz writes, regenerative agriculture, for instance, is a way to raise livestock that is at least carbon neutral, if not beneficial to the environment. And eating animals can be seen as part of the ancient cycle of life and death, whereby all creatures, great and small, depend on other lives to sustain themselves. Yet, these and many other arguments are rarely given consideration by those in the media opposed to meat eating. In fact, most of the reporting on carnivory falls down on the job almost entirely. Now to the gender divide. Quote, reporters would need make only a few phone calls to discern that carnivores are not mostly muscle-seeking men, but many middle-aged women. Consider Angela Parsons, a mother of 3, who at age 46 suffered from pain so excruciating that she could hardly get out of bed. I thought I'd be stuck at home watching TV all day while my family moved on. I just didn't understand why I was so sick, even though I was doing everything I could to be better. She took supplements, tried diets including vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, Mediterranean, but she says nothing was working. I honestly didn't want to live anymore, she said. Then Parsons gave up all plant foods. And here's a list of the health issues she resolved. Gout, tennis elbow, severe dry eyes, unquenchable thirst, kidney pain, dry skin, dry mouth, hypercalcemia, high DHEA, high testosterone, premenstrual syndrome, headaches, poor sleep, intermittent carpal tunnel syndrome, plantar fasciitis, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, osteoarthritis, degenerative myopia, and depression. Incredible. She also dropped more than 4 dress sizes in 15 months. Dr. Judy Cho, a wonderful carnivore teacher, reports that 60% of her carnivore patients are women. And we have incredible women carnivore influencers. Bella, the steak and butter gal, 5 Minute Body, Laura Spath, Kelly Hogan, Michaela Peterson, so many more. Or the great carnivore scientists, Dr. Georgia Ede, Amber O'Hearn, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann. Why have journalists turned this into a male-female, gender divide, conservative, liberal issue? Why do they ignore the diversity in gender and politics of the carnivore movement? As I said earlier, they tend to have a naive, divisive view of the world. They see hunting and consuming animals as dirty and gross and backward. They pretend, or they want to pretend, that the world is not as it is. So they have a natural aversion to carnivore. And whatever journalists do not like, they tend to label as right-wing toxic masculinity. I'm saying this not as a conservative. In many ways, I'm a pretty liberal guy. But I deplore hypocrisy and dishonesty. And that's what we get with the way journalists treat the carnivore movement. And there's another deeper reason. As Teicholz points out, journalists, quote, show no compassion for the health problems people have endured and their sometimes decade-long struggle to overcome ailments. Michaela Peterson, for instance, didn't just have run-of-the-mill arthritis. She was diagnosed with the condition at age 7, followed by severe depression at age 10, and a serious sleep disorder at age 21. By age 17, she had undergone multiple joint replacements, and the carnivore diet fixed that. And the New York Times manifests a deep well of compassion for, quote, fat activists who aim to destigmatize larger bodies, even among children, yet the reservoir of empathy runs dry for people who have found a way to recover their health via eating meat. Ouch. No compassion, no empathy, just indifference at best, slander at worst. Teicholz continues, it's revealing that the recent Times article on carnivores ran in the style section and was written by a reporter whose beat is, quote, cultural trends, social media, and the world of design. In fact, none of the carnivore stories I've seen are anchored by health or nutrition journalists, which is another sign that the bias against meat among our leading newspapers and magazines prevents them from even considering a rigorous approach to carnivore health claims. But that's why we're here. We're here to counter this mainstream narrative, to tell the truth. Carnivore is not political. Carnivore is the proper human diet, and we need to say that over and over again.